everyone, it's me. If you don't know me, my name's Caylee, and I make a lot of reaction videos over on TikTok. But I'm making my way over here because I just have so much to say. I'm going to be starting a series called Reacting to Misogyny, where I'm going to be taking the most misogynistic content that I've seen throughout the week and react to it. Seems pretty self-explanatory, but let me know if you like it, or if you don't. Just please make sure to subscribe while you're here, and don't forget to hit that little notification bell. Give this video a thumbs up while you're at it. You guys will be seeing a lot more content here from now on. Please bear with me while I get the studio put together and the audio all worked out. Promise that I'm going to do my best to make it as perfect as possible for you guys, and I think that's it. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so the first thing I have for you is a video. So let's watch that together and then we'll discuss.
I've been married for 6 years and my husband is wonderful. He's a great man. And I'm not ungrateful, but I have to tell him to do everything, like everything. Like if I want a hug, I have to say, hey, come over here and hug me. Or if I want to go out on the weekend, I have to say, why don't we go out on the weekend? And it's just kind of like a little unromantic to have to tell him all the time. And I was hoping that, I'm hoping that maybe he'll think of it on his own, you know. And I don't want him to be a mind reader, but, you know, am I being unfair by wanting that?
I don't think you're being unfair for wanting it, but what I would definitely say is you married a man.
Well, yeah, I did.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
And so he hears about 25% of what you say.
Right.
He hears nothing that you don't say, you know? And even of the 25% that he hears you say, he kind of gets 5% of that. Because we'll be sitting next to, any man who's ever been in a relationship, sit next to a woman, you know, what's wrong, babe? Nothing. Oh, okay.
Right?
Man.
Because we don't talk to each other like that,
Right.
men. So getting used to talking to a woman and speaking your language and hearing behind the lines of what you're saying, that is so far beyond. Once you tell him what you want, he's gonna remember it, and he's gonna try to give it to you and make sure your needs are getting met.
Sometimes I just want to yell. I just want to yell. Compose yourself, Caylee. So you notice that she leads by saying, I'm not ungrateful. And that's most likely because she's been called ungrateful when she's tried to express any of her needs to her partner in the past. And this is such a common tactic in bad relationships because they'll make you feel bad about asking for more by telling you that you don't appreciate what they already do. And that can be really frustrating, especially when you're asking for something that should be considered the bare minimum in a relationship. But as women, there's nothing that will make us abandon our own needs quicker than the fear of being seen as selfish. So when someone tells us that we're asking for too much, we immediately resort back to asking for nothing. And because we don't want them to feel underappreciated, we start telling them how much we appreciate what they do instead of continuing to voice our frustration with what they don't. But that never ends well for us because before we know it, we're 6 months farther into the relationship with the same frustrations, but nothing's changed. And if you notice, she does something similar to what she did with the ungrateful comment when she says that she doesn't expect him to be a mind reader, because she's most likely trying to get ahead of the criticism that she inevitably thinks she'll get. And I think that's an important point on its own because it shows how women internalize the things that they're accused of. It forces us to consider that maybe we didn't state our needs clearly or in the right way or enough times. And that's good for the person we're angry at because if we're busy blaming ourselves for why they didn't hear us, then we're less likely to be angry about the fact that they didn't hear us in the first place. So these men don't actually think you expect them to be a mind reader, but they're trying to make you feel like you're angry for no reason so that they don't have to take accountability for the reason you're angry. And I know that most women have heard this line before, but it always blows my mind that men tend to say it in the moments when their partner is telling them exactly what they want. And what's worse is that it's always said in regards to something that the woman has communicated many times in the past. And you can't accuse someone of expecting you to be a mind reader if they've actually told you what's on their mind 1,000 times before. Let's take this video, for example. She's actually talking about how often she has to tell her husband exactly what she wants, and yet she says that he never does it without being prompted first. And not knowing what someone wants is only a valid excuse the first time they communicate that want. Anytime after that is just blatant disregard. And that's true whether someone says they wish you'd give them a hug when you walk through the door or run the dishwasher before bed. Because even though one adult shouldn't have to teach another adult how to run the dishwasher, you can't claim not knowing how is the reason you didn't do something if someone's given you instructions many times before. It's not that they're incapable of remembering, it's that they don't remember what they don't prioritize. So there's a reason why they always forget the kid's soccer game, but never forget the date and time of a meeting at work. But let's take this a step further, because they also don't remember what they don't have to, and pretending to forget becomes the foundation of weaponized incompetence. And it's easy to see why they use this tactic, because they don't look like the bad guy even if they are. And by making their failure to complete the task seem unintentional, they make the person that was expecting something of them feel like they don't even have the right to be upset. So pretending that they forgot to do something or don't know how to do something is the easiest way for them to get out of doing something. And it allows them to absolve themselves of any guilt they may have in the process. But it also becomes pretty effective over time, because we start to gradually lower our standards until we eventually quit asking them at all. And that's really their desired result, because men know that most women will end up doing it themselves when their partner has failed to do it for them. And it's easy to see how this can derail relationships, because it starts off small, but before you know it, they start treating the act of forgetting to do something as the polite way to get out of just not wanting to do it. Sometimes it's even disguised as a compliment, and you don't even realize that your partner telling you that you always do it better is a way to manipulate you into being the only person doing it at all. But now let's get into the rest of this video, because after she asked this question with such an obvious desire to be loved as she loves, this guy's only answer is that she married a man. And he makes it sound like she was just stupid to have expected anything more from a creature so dumb. And this is not only incredibly patronizing to men, but I also find it interesting that you're only dumb when it's convenient for you. Think about it. You claim that men are the smarter and more rational of the sexes, and yet we can't expect you to remember a single task or request. But it's really easy to see why they do this, because if they can make it sound like they struggle to comprehend direction, then it puts the responsibility on women to make them understand. And that means that they can blame it on her inability to communicate instead of his refusal to listen. And they can say that her expectations are too high instead of even considering that his amount of effort is too low. And you can tell that this is probably something she's heard before, because she still asks if she's being unfair by expecting something different. This guy actually tells her that her husband only hears 25% of what she has to say, and then proceeds to say that he hears nothing that she doesn't say. So he's telling her to make sure she says it, but to also make sure that she doesn't expect to be heard. But then he continued to say that if she just told him what she wanted, then he would give it to her. And that's what makes me so crazy about this video, because he literally makes 3 completely contradictory statements with a straight face and doesn't even consider how damaging that can be to that woman or women in general. You could actually see the hope in that woman's eyes, and you basically told her that there's no solution when she asked you for help. He told her to talk to her husband, but her husband won't hear her, but he can't change if she doesn't tell him how, even though he won't understand what she says, but he'll give her the world if she just asks. That guy actually sat there and told her that it's pointless to speak, and then told her to speak some more. Listen, men are capable of hearing what they want to. Men remember the stats of their favorite sports teams, they remember the steps required to do their job, and they even remember 100% of what you have to say after you've already walked out the door. They literally start promising everything you ever wanted as soon as you decide that you no longer want it from them. And that may be a whole different conversation, but I refuse to sit here and act like men have no brain power, because it hurts men, it hurts women, it hurts families, and it hurts relationships. So now, before I go on forever, let's get into the next one. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually a collection of screenshots from Reddit. So I'm going to read them out loud, but I'm also going to put them up on the screen so you can follow along in case I have to edit out some of the language during post-production. Buckle up for this one, you guys. Okay, so the post appears in the, what do you call it? I think it's called a subreddit. So it's in the Dead Bedrooms subreddit. And her username is Throwaway Hurt Wife, and the post is titled Letter to My Husband, I Hope You See This. So it starts, throwaway account for obvious reasons. You've posted several times in this sub complaining that I don't fuck you enough. You post that I shrink away from your touch and you just don't know what to do anymore. Instead of complaining to internet strangers and making me seem like a frigid bitch who might have some childhood trauma regarding sex, which isn't even true, what's wrong with you? Maybe you should try looking inward. Do you think it's maybe because you refuse to help me clean? Do you think it's maybe because of the fact that whenever I ask you for help, you tell me, well, you do it better than me, or maybe later? Or the fact that at least once a month you yell at me for not making the food correctly? Do you think it's due to the fact that you never once woke up at night for the babies and would yell at me when one of them woke you up crying? Or because of the fact that across 3 kids, you've changed maybe 5 diapers total? Do you think it's because you refuse to spend any time at all with me and the kids? I can't even remember the last time you took me on a date night. I stopped asking 2 years ago when you didn't even get me a card for my birthday. You actually woke me up on my birthday to yell at me that our son had thrown up all over his bed and I didn't clean it. If you were awake and I wasn't, maybe just do it yourself? Do you think it's because the only time you try to fuck me is after I'm already asleep? Do you think it's because of the fact that over the last 3 years you haven't even tried to make me come? Or that you threw away my vibrator because I shouldn't have anything except my husband inside of me? Or maybe because you keep asking me for certain sex acts that you know make me extremely uncomfortable? Do you think maybe it's the fact that after the last 3 times we had sex, you've made rude comments about my extra flab and stretch marks? Or maybe was it the time that I bought lingerie and you laughed and said I should have gotten a larger size? Or maybe last year for Christmas, when I said it would be fun to go to a cabin in the snow just us for my birthday, you instead got me personal training sessions and told me this will help with my attraction. Do you think it's because of the fact that you constantly talk about how hot your new coworker is? Or the fact that you go to a strip club almost every Friday after work instead of spending time with your wives and kids? Please explain to me why I would want to have sex with you. Why? When the only times we do have sex, it lasts 3 minutes and afterwards you just roll over and tell me to get myself off. How can I when you throw away my vibrators? Maybe instead of coming to Reddit and making me seem like the bad guy, fix yourself first, fuck you. Words don't describe the contempt I feel for you after finding your multiple posts across different subs about how I hate sex and am possibly asexual. I love sex. I used to have good sex. I miss it. I don't miss you anymore. I hope you fucking read this. Don't believe everything you read here, people. There's always another side. And to all the men complaining here that their wives don't fuck them enough, maybe stop to consider the fact that you might be the issue. Rant over. Edit. A few people have messaged me about the cleaning portion of this post. We both work full-time jobs, so it's not like I'm home all day and should be taking care of it. Holy shit. Can you imagine finding those Reddit posts from your husband? Holy shit. Okay, first of all, if you have the cash to go to the strip club every Friday night, then you can afford to hire someone and make sure your wife can have a minute to herself. And you shouldn't have to hire someone because you should be giving her the time she needs. But if you're not going to get off your lazy ass to do it yourself, then you should be putting some of those dollar bills to good use. But aside from all of that, I think that there's so many important relationship problems buried within this post. So I thought that it may be worth it to dissect it together. Here's a man who's spent countless Reddit posts complaining that his wife doesn't want to be intimate, but hasn't taken any time to consider what he may have done to cause it. And it's also a perfect example of a woman who's emotionally checked out of a relationship that she's still physically in. This guy was contemplating that his wife may have childhood trauma associated with sex with strangers on the internet, but never once even considered talking about it directly with her. So he couldn't find the time to participate in the house he lives in, wash the dishes he ate off of, but he could somehow find the time to analyze his wife online so he didn't have to take accountability for anything himself. And the sad part is that I bet that she's told him exactly what's wrong or why she doesn't want to be intimate 1,000 times before. And yet he's considered every single reason aside from the one that she's just come right out and told him. But do you know how much energy it takes to come up with 1,000 excuses for why it's everyone else's fault so that you never have to admit that it's yours? And can you imagine what would happen if you put that energy into your relationship instead of trying to deflect responsibility for why it's ruined? And that's what kills me. Because abusive men always have time to be cruel, but they never have time to be accountable. She talks about how you yell at her for not making the food correctly. But what makes you an expert on making food correctly if you never make food at all? You'll sit there and tell her that she's doing it wrong, but if she's not doing it right, then why don't you just do it yourself? And it doesn't matter if she spent an hour making the meal and another one cleaning it up, if you're always going to ruin it all in a single second with one bad insult. Think about the fact that you make sure to insult the food the one time it's bad, but never think to compliment it one of the many times that it's good. So maybe she doesn't even do anything wrong, and you just want to make her feel like she's not capable of doing anything right. She says she stopped asking him to take her on a date night 2 years ago. So she obviously tried to tell him what she needed, but to no avail. And we hear men say that they never did things because she never asked. But the reality is that most women stop asking after years of being ignored. She talks about how he didn't buy her a birthday card. And why would you want to be intimate with a man who doesn't care enough about you to remember what matters? Women don't want to tell the men in their life to do something romantic. People say it's a thought that counts, but if it's not your thought, then it doesn't count. Asking someone for affection is a moment of vulnerability. And if asking for something never results in getting it, then people stop asking in order to avoid the disappointment. She talks about him never helping her around the house, and even though we know that it shouldn't be considered help, I think it's obvious that she uses this language because she's been made to feel like it all falls on her. She makes it very clear right off the bat that she's exhausted, and yet he can't figure out why she's not in the mood. She details out how he says he'll do it later or uses weaponized incompetence, but he obviously never tries to do something to just take it off her plate. And she shouldn't have to ask him in the first place. You ask children to do chores, so it's not sexy when you have to tell your husband to do his. And it shouldn't be hard to understand the effects that can have on your marriage, because women don't want to have sex with men they feel they have to mother. And in this case, she can't even respect him as the father of her children because he obviously refuses to act like one. So this isn't a mystery. He says that she shrinks away from his touch, and she's literally laying out why. She mentions how he keeps asking her for sex acts that make her uncomfortable. And I think people severely underestimate how damaging that can be in a relationship. True intimacy is built on trust. So a sexual relationship is over the second she starts to associate physical intimacy with feeling unsafe. And that will eventually make her fear physical touch altogether, because she'll start to worry that he'll misinterpret any innocent behavior as an invitation for something sexual. So she suddenly won't want to sit next to him, bend over in front of him, or even change in front of him. And before you know it, the house that she's exhausting herself to take care of won't even feel safe enough for her to call home. She even mentions how he always waits to initiate sex until after she's already asleep. So this man is actually waiting until she can't consent to try and touch her. And that means that her house isn't safe, her bed isn't safe, and her body isn't safe. And yet you can't figure out why she recoils away from you. She talks about how he doesn't even consider her on the occasions when they do have sex, which makes me think that he's using his wife in the same way that he would use porn. He's essentially using her as a tool to get himself off and then turning her off and walking away. He obviously doesn't look at sex as something he does with his wife. He looks at it as something he does to her. And it's so ironic because he's sitting there complaining about her ignoring his needs when he's never even stopped to consider hers. And this becomes even more clear when she talks about how he throws away her toys, because it not only proves that he's extremely insecure in the bedroom, but it also proves that he sees sex as something she should perform for his enjoyment, not something that she should actually be enjoying for herself. And I found it really interesting that she said that he picks about her body and tells her that he's not attracted to her, while he sits there and talks about how attractive his new coworker is. Now, first of all, do you know how damaging it is for a woman to be constantly harassed and touched by a man who's claiming that he's not even attracted to her? We know that he's obviously trying to lower her self-esteem so he can ultimately lower her fight. But it's also a common manipulation tactic. They'll say these things in hopes that you'll have sex with them just to stop them from having sex with her. Even though the men that say these things usually don't have a chance of sleeping with their coworkers anyways. But think about how insane you have to be in order to call someone ugly and then wonder why they don't feel sexy. Think about it. You tell a woman that her flab is unattractive and then wonder why she can't stay lubricated as you're staring down at her naked stomach. This is not hard to figure out. You sit there and tell her that she needs to go to the gym, but you give her absolutely no time to prioritize herself. And can you imagine how frustrating it must be to listen to a man tell you to go work out when he won't give you the time to take a 5-minute shower without being interrupted? Their failure to participate at home is the reason why these women don't have the time to do anything for themselves inside or outside of it. And that situation is made even worse when they tell you to find the time to look better for them, but don't help you to facilitate the time to feel better about yourself. Obviously, I could literally talk about this post forever because there's just so much to it, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here so that we're not here for hours. Definitely let me know in the comments what other themes you saw throughout the post, and if you've ever experienced anything similar. Let me just apologize in advance if you've ever had to endure anyone similar to this man. So that's it, guys. I think that's all the misogyny that most of us can handle for one day. I really want to know what you guys think of this series, so please make sure to leave me a comment down below and let me know. I'm planning on making an episode for this series weekly, but you will definitely be seeing other stuff from me here too. In the meantime, you can find me on TikTok and Instagram and all the places. Please make sure to like the video if you did like it, and please don't forget to subscribe before you leave. I love you all so very much, and I will see you in my next video. Mwah. Bye, guys.